Journalism is not a crime. These words from News 24 editor-in-chief Adriaan Basson, and a sentiment echoed by journalists on social media today. This as journalist Karen Moorn and prosecutor Billy Downer fight private prosecution by former President Jacob Zuma. He accuses the pair of leaking and publishing his medical records. Many journalists see it as an attack on their freedoms. For more on the issue, I'm joined by Juanita Hunter, Assistant Politics and Opinion Editor at News 24. Juanita, thank you very much, as always, for speaking to us here on ENCA. Can you tell us firstly, before we talk in more detail about the impact on journalism broadly, about the significance of this being a private prosecution by the former president as opposed to a civil case?
Yes, we know that this is part of former President Jacob Zuma's efforts to shirk away the attention from the case that he faces. He has now pointed fingers or tried to deflect attention away from him and the case that he faces in relation to the arms deal by privately prosecuting prosecutor Billy Downer and Karen Moorn, who's a News 24 legal journalist, for reporting on what he says leaked medical records. The reality of the situation is that the former President Jacob Zuma's medical records were not leaked, and Karen Moorn did not report on any leaked document. She reported on documents that were in open court, and the former president now incorrectly wants to point fingers at Billy Downer and Karen Moorn as part of this grand conspiracy against him, instead of answering the case against him and the criminal charges that he faces.
Let's just look at the timing of this. So, in other words, if the former president Jacob Zuma is prosecuting in his private capacity advocate Billy Downer, let's just talk about that one specific focus of this prosecution, advocate Billy Downer, that means that advocate Billy Downer cannot in turn prosecute President Jacob Zuma in the arms deal case until this matter is dealt with. Am I correct in making that?
Absolutely, and I think that it then points to the crassness of the Stalingrad legal strategy that former President Jacob Zuma is employing in this particular case. What is the case about? What is he trying to do? Zuma is claiming that Downer and Moorn have contravened the National Prosecuting Act that disclose private documents to members of the public. The reality of it is that it was not a private document. It was not leaked to Karen Moorn, and there was no medical records per se, as he continuously asserts and his supporters assert. The reality of it is that former President Jacob Zuma and his supporters have a difficult relationship with the truth, and the truth in this case is that Karen Moorn simply did her job. She reported on his court case. She reported on documents that were in the public domain, that they were public records that Zuma's own lawyers put in the public domain.
Is this private prosecution of advocate Billy Downer and Karen Moorn going to further delay Zuma's appearance in the arms deal case?
Well, that's likely to happen. There has been a postponement. We know that there's two cases that have been heard. The first is Moorn's urgent application against Zuma, and she is asking the High Court in Pietermaritzburg to scrap the private prosecution entirety. She says that basically, there's no basis for the case. So there's one case, and then the second case. So that's the urgent case that Karen Moorn has brought before the Pietermaritzburg High Court, and then separately to that is the postponement of the private prosecution, which has been postponed to the 2nd of February 2023. It's obviously going to be up to the court to decide in the corruption case whether this delays it, but it's likely to do so. And again, that points to what is at play here from the onset.
Karen Moorn is one of your colleagues at News 24. Knowing her, what's been the impact of this prosecution on her ability to continue doing what is quite simply her job?
I mean, we have to spell out, Anli, that this is an attempt to intimidate journalists. This is a clear manifestation to threaten and intimidate journalists from reporting on the corruption case of former President Jacob Zuma. They're trying to criminalize journalism. She has simply done her job. As News 24 and as journalists in South Africa, we have to stand by Karen Moon's side because she has reported fairly and ethically. And she cannot be criminalized for simply doing a job. This cannot be seen beyond what it is, and that's attack on media freedom in South Africa. And today it's Karen Moon, tomorrow it's me, tomorrow it's you. And the reality of it is that this effort to criminalize journalism is part of former President Jacob Zuma's long-standing efforts to gag journalists, to stand in the way of media freedom. And this is something that we cannot allow to happen as journalists. And quite manifestly, this is a man who has been incarcerated for violating the Constitution. He has no qualms with violating the Constitution in regards to media freedom. And that's why we have to stand up against this as media practitioners and journalists in South Africa and stand by Karen Moon, who is facing unprecedented efforts to intimidate and gag her.
Juanita, Advocate Downer has requested that former President Zuma put down a deposit for his legal fees. And Advocate Dalian Pofu has indicated to the court that a surety deposit of 500,000 Rand has been paid. Can you explain to us what this is for? And then I'd like to get your comment on the significance of where this money comes from, in light of the fact that we know that Zuma has been unable to pay millions owed to both the state and to VBS Bank.
So the request for the deposit is to guarantee that he is not pursuing on some spurious litigation, which the case is made that he is. And so this is a deposit that says, should you fail in your endeavor, which all indications prove that he will fail in his endeavor to privately prosecute Billy Downer and Karen Moon, that their legal fees will be taken care of. Because again, you cannot have this unprecedented situation where former president is privately prosecuting. And remember, this comes after the National Prosecuting Authority weighed the case and said there's no basis for any prosecution in this regard. And that's why he's now gone down this road to try to criminalize the efforts of a prosecutor and the work of a journalist. Now, where does the money come from? That's very important, particularly because former President Jacob Zuma has pled poverty. But the irony of it is that in his case, he's also pled incapacity and being terminally ill as the basis for not appearing before court in his own criminal matter. And today we saw him in good spirits and in high spirits, present at the court and mobilizing supporters outside. So when it comes to the financial question about how can you afford 500,000 when you owe VBS so much of money, when you owe millions in relation to unpaid legal fees or cost orders against him, this is just one of the many contradictions that come up in relation to former President Jacob Zuma. And it will be interesting to see the source of that deposit that he had to put down as surety that he is not just litigating in vain, and all indication points that he probably is.
Well, thank you very much, Juanita Hunter, editor at News 24, for bringing us your insights. We're going to keep on bringing our viewers the developments of this case as they happen.